Welcome to The Verdict. I'm Kent Myers, and as you can see, I'm here flying solo today. Mick Cornett will be gone this Sunday, and several more until he is able to come back and tape some more shows with us. But he will be back, I promise you. Today we're going to be talking about ethics in journalism. As you know, journalists quite often spend some significant period of time reporting on the successes or failures of ethics of other persons in the news, prominent people who may do some actions that are considered questionable from an ethical standpoint. But today we're going to be focusing on what are the ethics in place that rule and govern journalists, how they are changing, particularly in this era of the internet, the web, all kinds of blogging going on. How does one that is truly a professional journalist know what is the right thing to do and what is not? And how is that changing from prior times? We've got two good guests, Bob Ross from the Ethics and Excellence in Journalism Foundation, and Ed Kelley, the editor of the Oklahoman, will be here to talk to us about ethics in journalism. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Stay tuned. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
A greener planet, cleaner air, a healthy economy, national security, a smaller deficit and a stronger dollar, green jobs, better jobs, energy independence, warmth and light and transportation. These are the reasons Chesapeake champions natural gas every day.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Kent Myers filling in solo today without Mick Cornett, but as I indicated in the opening, he'll be back soon. We're really pleased today to have two exceptional guests join us to talk about the ethics in journalism subject. On my right is Bob Ross. Bob is the president and CEO of the Ethics and Excellence in Journalism Foundation, headquartered here in Oklahoma City. He also, by the way, is president and CEO of the Inasmuch Foundation. Bob did his undergraduate work at Washington and Lee University, did his law work at the University of Oklahoma, practiced for a while with the fine firm in Oklahoma City of McAfee and Taft. Since that time has been involved with both the foundations, Ethics and Excellence in Journalism and the Inasmuch Foundation. He's very active in the community otherwise, serving on a number of boards, including the Oklahoma City National Memorial and the Public School Foundation. Mm-hmm. This is his first visit. Bob, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have it.
Great to be here.
Thank you. To my left is a friend, Ed Kelley. Ed is editor of the Oklahoman and has been since 2003. He's a native of Perry, Oklahoma. Did his undergraduate work in journalism at the University of Oklahoma, where he graduated Phi Beta Kappa. He has been with the Oklahoman since his first days. He's been a lifer, if you will, at the Oklahoman, and we're glad that's true. Been there about 35 years,
That's right.
I take it. He was National Editor of the Year in 1996, as designated by the National Press Foundation. This also is his first visit. Ed, welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank you, Ken.
Let me start out, Bob. Let's talk about the Ethics and Excellence in Journalism Foundation. What is it? Tell our viewers about it.
Well, thanks, and it's great to be here. The foundation was started by Edith Kinney Gaylord in 1982, and Edith was really a pioneer journalist. Of course, her family owned and still owns the Oklahoman, and she worked for her dad's newspaper growing up, and after college, she, in 1942, was hired by the AP, and Edith went off to New York City and then to D.C., and she was a great journalist. And
she was truly a professional journalist.
She was.
At a time, I suspect, when there weren't very many women journalists.
That's right, and I mean that's why she's a pioneer. There were not many. In fact, she was the only woman on the general news staff of the Associated Press. And when she was in Washington D.C. in the 40s, she got to be very good friends with Eleanor Roosevelt, the First Lady. And Eleanor Roosevelt, she called her own press conferences and made the different journalism organizations send women to cover the press conferences. Well, they didn't have women. The only one that had a woman was the AP, because they had Edith. So they sent Edith, and she became really close friends with Mrs. Roosevelt. But yeah, Edith, she just had journalism in her blood, and so I think it was, for her, a very easy decision when she moved back to Oklahoma City in the 60s, as she started thinking about what she wanted to do with her money to start these foundations. The Journalism Foundation being her lifelong passion, and then Inasmuch Foundation, which you mentioned, is more for social good. And it's interesting because Inasmuch is really what is recognized most of the time in Oklahoma, because it's so focused on Oklahoma. The Journalism Foundation is much better known nationwide because it's making grants all over the country. And so the foundation is doing just that, making grants to journalism organizations all over. What is the mission of the Journalism Foundation, to kind of shorten the name? Yeah, the Journalism Foundation, the foundation does all sorts of things in journalism. The mission is to invest in the future of journalism by building the ethics, skills, and opportunities needed to advance principled, probing news and information. Well, that's a pretty good mission. Our advisory committee, of which Ed sits on, is made up of journalists from all over the country. We have 9 of them, and so we had a strategic plan. It's been about a year and a half, and they came up with a mission. And as for that mission, what do we do to actually implement that? We have really 3 core areas. We invest in youth education, we invest in professional development, and a new, really exciting opportunity is investigative journalism. And so we really focus in on those 3 areas, and that's what we ask our folks seeking grants to focus in on. So people that are active in investigative journalism, for instance, that need some help in carrying out particular projects might file a request for funding from the Journalism Foundation. Right. Journalism Foundation provides the resources to make that happen. That's right. An organization can apply twice a year. We have a July cycle and a January cycle, and they have to come to us with their ideas. And so what happens, they file an application, and then our advisory committee, with the help of our staff at the foundation, that reviews the applications and makes recommendations, and our board, which is made up of 6 individuals, finalize those recommendations. And so we give money, and the foundation gives around $4 million a year to journalism organizations, which is very unique. Edith, again, was a visionary in this respect. Yes. There aren't many foundations focused solely on journalism in the country. In fact, there's only a handful. You've got Knight, McCormick, Scripps, Ethics and Excellence. So there's just not a lot that are focused just on journalism. So it's really a terrific thing what Edith did to set this foundation up, to base it in Oklahoma City and really promote journalism all over the country. Yeah, Ed, I know you're on the advisory board.
That's right.
Of the foundation, and I am of course, as probably all our viewers are, just generally aware of the rather horrific death of Daniel Pearl,
Right.
the Wall Street Journal reporter that was brutally murdered overseas.
Right.
And I also am aware that the Journalism Foundation has something they call a Pearl Project.
That's right.
Can you tell us about
we
that?
We partnered with some Georgetown University students in Washington, D.C., as well as some professionals in the Washington, D.C. area who knew Daniel Pearl well, including some folks who were his former colleagues at the Wall Street Journal, to try to really get to the bottom of who committed his murder. There were certainly groups that took credit for it after he died, after he was slain in the Middle East. But are those believable sources? Were those really the people who did it? So these young journalists working with money, seed money they got from the foundation, were able to put together a plan to really go after documents, records, doing some interviews, particularly in this country, and even being able to do some interviews from a long distance to try to determine exactly what were the reasons behind his death and who were the people who committed it. And I think when the results are released, that a lot of people will be surprised at not only their findings, but how well these young journalists working with the professionals did in coming to their conclusions.
Now,
it's really very exciting.
This kind of project would not be possible without some funding from the outside, and that's what the foundation
That's what the
is
foundation
providing.
stepped in and provided, yes.
Yeah. Do you have any expectation of when the report might be released?
Bob, what do you
Yeah,
think?
hopefully it's going to be coming out the first half of this year, the spring, the summertime. We hope. They're wanting to be on, a 60 Minutes type show. They're wanting to produce a book. They're wanting to do a lot of things to roll out their findings, and so that just takes some time to gear up. But we hope in the next 6 months or so.
I remember at the time the story aired, just as a news reader, that the widow was of course deeply involved in the story. Is she affiliated or supportive of the project?
She's very supportive. The person who runs the project is a lady named Azra Nomani, and Azra was very good friends with the Pearls, was very good friends with Daniel Pearl, worked at the Wall Street Journal with him. In fact, it was her house that the Pearls were living in when Daniel Pearl was kidnapped and murdered. And so Azra was a key factor after that to help Marianne Pearl kind of put the pieces together and figure out exactly what happened. But it's an exciting project. We're really glad to be able to support it, and I'm really excited about it because of the use of the students and how much they've learned and how much they've benefited. And Azra has done a terrific job on that.
What a way to start a journalism career. We've got to take a break here. We'll be right back. You're watching The Verdict. We're talking about ethics in journalism. See you in just a minute.
I remember walking into the academy and seeing the Highway Patrol core values, the professionalism, the courage, the bravery, integrity. And I realized that those are some of the same qualities that I was taught by my grandmother that the Chickasaw Nation valued in their people. We had received calls of heavy, heavy rain. I mean, it was the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen in my life. We had seen the white pickup truck with the two elderly people in it. There was no means of escape. And looking down at these people, you could see the terror in their eyes, and we knew we had to make a move, or these people would probably die. And I reached down and grabbed their arm to help pull them up. I remember thinking, these people are gonna live, this is gonna work out. I appreciate this citation, but that's what we do. That's what we're expected to do. I'm glad that I was able to carry on that tradition of bravery and courage under strife.
Home values are down in some states, but not in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's home values have increased 4.2% during the past 12 months. Unlike some states where home values have decreased as much as 20%. Good thing you're in Oklahoma. There may be real estate problems in some states, but there has never been a better time than now to buy or sell a home in Oklahoma. One of the most affordable states in the country, Oklahomans are buying and selling homes every day, and an Oklahoma Realtor can show you how. Good thing you're in Oklahoma.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a plug nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up, want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
We're back. We're visiting with Bob Ross and Ed Kelley, talking about ethics in journalism, and I want to direct the first question for this segment to Ed. Ed, you've been in this business your entire adult life.
That's right.
And been a professional journalist. Tell us about what kind of changes you've seen in the ethical norms that guide what a journalist can and can't do.
Well, Ken, I've been around long enough that I can remember the Watergate scandal. My career basically began when I was in college. And at the time, the big issue among professional journalists was the use of unnamed sources. As you can recall, that much of what the reporting that got done during Watergate was done through unnamed sources. And the Washington Post, which was the publication that broke the original stories, created quite a stir when it basically made public that we would not do any Watergate reporting unless we had two, not one, but two independent sources confirming the information before we went to publication.
Now, would Deep Throat be considered one?
He would be considered one, that's right. Deep Throat was considered one, but the editors of the Post insisted at the time that Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein would have another source. And since that time, obviously it's got a lot more complicated, and I think for two reasons, and you mentioned them at the top of the show. The first one is the advent, if you will, of the 24/7 news cycle, which came out right about 30 years ago when cable television came to most cities, including Oklahoma City. And we all know that cable news network, or CNN, was the forerunner of that. And suddenly there were lots of imitators, and it meant that everything was news and everything had to be done instantaneously, but sometimes without the benefit of context and reflection. The second big development over the last generation or two obviously has been the internet. You mentioned that. The late 1990s and the first decade of this century saw an absolute explosion of internet sites. Many of these news sites are run by bloggers who are not part of a traditional news organization like ours, as well as the broadcast affiliates here in Oklahoma City and Tulsa. And so they're not necessarily guided by the same standards that traditional news organizations have been guided by, and that sophisticated news consumers have been used to over all these many years. So you take the power of a 24/7 continuous news cycle and add it to it with the steroid-like mentality, if you will, of the internet, and you've got an absolute information explosion, which is a good thing, but it does put traditional news organizations, whether print or broadcast, sometimes in ethical dilemmas on the guidelines that we use to go to market with news and information, as well as the behavior as journalists that we think the public comes to expect from us.
Well, what do you do? What kind of dilemma are you in when all of a sudden a story is broken by some blogger or somehow on the internet? You may not have any confirmation of it, or you may have a single source. What would you do in that circumstance? Would you go ahead and publish, or would you hold up and try to dig deeper?
Well, obviously every situation is different, but we want to be first, but more importantly, we want to be right.
Yeah.
So if it means doing some more work, doing some more digging before we go to publication, and by publication today means not just print in the Oklahoman, but certainly online with our video journalism, or even on mobile devices like cell phones, that we're gonna adhere to our standards and not necessarily succumb to someone else's, to ensure that people who use our platforms in print, online, video, whatever it may be, can be assured that the standards that we have for accuracy and fairness are as close as they can be.
Bob, how does the foundation support organizations that adhere to rigorous ethical norms?
Well, it's in our name, and so we want to see some aspect of ethics in every application because it really does apply across the board. We don't want ethics to be the afterthought, the last course taken before you graduate.
Yeah.
We want it to be a thoughtful piece to everything our grantees do. And so, just a couple things we've done in ethics specific. Right now, we've got an ethics chair at Arizona State at the Cronkite School, and that person is comes in every year. A different person comes in every year and teaches ethics.
And the foundation supports
And the
that?
foundation pays for that to happen. That's one example. We do others like that around the country. It's kind of, they call it a visiting professor, and so they've got some great journalist that comes in for a sabbatical for a semester or a year and teaches ethics. We have paid for chairs at UCO in ethics and other places, and then like I said, every application that comes in, we want to see an ethics piece, and it's just incredibly important part of every project. If it's youth education or professional development or investigative reporting, there needs to be discussion on ethics that our advisory committee reviews and signs off on, and so it's very important.
Ed, you get new reporters in joining your ranks at the Oklahoman, and they're enthusiastic and with lots of energy and out digging and wanting to get going. Do you find them coming into, pardon me, the Oklahoman with already imbued with the ethics that are necessary, or do you have to do some internal teaching in that regard?
Well, again, it depends.
Or
on
mentoring.
A little bit of mentoring for sure, and we try to, when they first join us, try to ensure that they are familiar with our ethics and news guidelines and standards. That's among the first things we do when they do join us. And we do have in-house training, professional training sessions from time to time in which these kinds of things are discussed. For the younger ones that we hire who are not too far out of college, a year or two or three, depending on where they came from, a really great journalism program, usually they come in and they're very familiar with journalism standards. For some other ones, maybe not so much. So, but we feel this is very, very important when they come in, that this is among the first things that they're going to hear from us. And they're going to hear from us fairly frequently about this because, again, what's the old saying, Kent? Trust is the coin of the realm. Yeah. We in the news organizations like ours would be out of business if our audiences, and when I talk about audiences, both our readers and advertisers, if they didn't have faith in what we do. And the underpinning, I think, of that faith is that we're going to be guided by a strong code of ethics.
Well, you have certainly exemplified that not only in your news portion of the newspaper, but in the editorial page as well. It seems to me that while I'm sure it's not an easy thing to do, you do draw a pretty sharp line between what's editorial and what is news.
That's right.
And that's something you're always on top of, I take it.
Yes, that's right. I'm the only person at the Oklahoman who works in both fields, both on the news side of the Oklahoman and News OK, as well as the opinion side, and that line is, as you suggest, a pretty bright one.
I know you're familiar with the University of Oklahoma College of Journalism,
right?
Because you folks at the Oklahoman have been instrumental in helping that develop. Do they push ethics programs there at to get your journalism degree?
Oh, very much so. I'm involved in a group internally at the Gaylord College, the Board of Visitors. And we've had many discussions in recent years with the faculty and the director, Joe Foote, or the dean, Joe Foote, to talk about strengthening the ethics curriculum at the university. And these discussions are ongoing all the time. And there's a great sense of seriousness, not just from the professionals working with the journalism college, but particularly with the faculty and the importance of that. So I feel good about the Gaylord College and where it's going, particularly where it's going down an ethics path.
We're out of time. We've been visiting with Bob Ross and Ed Kelley, talking about ethics in journalism. I'll be right back, and thanks to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Finishing up this show on ethics and journalism. Our sincere thanks to Bob Ross and Ed Kelley for coming and talking to us about this very important subject. You know, Oklahoma City is blessed in a lot of ways, but certainly in the news area and in the ethical news area, Oklahoma City leads the way just as it does in many other aspects. For Mick Cornett, we're going to say goodbye to you this Sunday, but look forward to seeing you next Sunday. Don't forget our website, theverdict.tv. We do pay attention to it and would love to hear from you. See you next Sunday.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.